In today's brief, we'll talk about disrupted logistics, the Euromaidan, and Russia's link to terrorism in Israel. I'm Rob Gaudet, coming to you from Lviv, and today is Sunday, October 15th, 2023. You're listening to the Ukraine War Brief podcast, where we bring you up to speed on the war in Ukraine in about 20 minutes or less. We exceeded our goal and delivered 120 pillows to the military hospital yesterday. Thank you. Let's get started with the news from the front. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, or GSAFU, reported that Russian losses on Thursday included 21 tanks, 49 armored combat vehicles, or ACVs, 44 artillery systems, 1 anti-aircraft system, 17 unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs or drones, and an absolutely shocking 1,030 personnel. Russian losses Friday included 9 tanks, 24 ACVs, 26 artillery systems, 1 anti-aircraft system, and 970 personnel. Losing 2,000 personnel over 2 days is absurd and completely unsustainable. Russian reporting on their own personnel losses has been intentionally vague, but according to a high-ranking NATO source speaking to Ukrainska Pravda, quote, "The Russians are suffering heavy losses, and we know this. We know for sure that the Russians suffer significantly more losses than the Ukrainians. Therefore, we believe that we are approaching the figure of about 300,000 Russian soldiers and mercenaries who have died since the invasion in February 2022, end quote. The official added that Russia has lost more than 1,800 officers in that time. In the eastern theater of operations, things continue to be difficult for Russia around Avdiivka. Colonel Alexander Stupun, spokesperson for the defense forces of the Tavria front, believes that Russia sees Avdiivka as an opportunity for a symbolic victory that could, quote, turn the tides of hostilities, end quote. He added that, quote, the occupation or encirclement of Avdiivka for them is perhaps the only thing they can achieve at this stage. Therefore, the enemy continues offensive actions, end quote. The Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, reported that geolocated footage indicates Russian forces have likely lost at least a battalion's worth of armored vehicles in their offensive. Ukrainian sources estimate Russia has lost at least 36 armored vehicles, including tanks, ACVs, and transport vehicles, in the last few days alone. Video footage published on the 11th purportedly shows a Russian armored vehicle in a column near Avdiivka simply falling into a body of water, and geolocated footage published on the 11th and 12th shows a Russian vehicle column being hit by Ukrainian forces. According to the ISW, Russian forces have captured about 4.5 square kilometers of territory from different directions around Avdiivka since they launched their offensive on October 10th, but they have not secured any major breakthroughs and are unlikely to immediately cut off Ukrainian forces in the city. The ISW also assessed that Russian forces are a little more than 3 kilometers away from the Ukrainian ground line of communication, called a GLOC, that's a supply line, along the O562 highway, and just over 5 kilometers away from the northern boundary of Avdiivka. The ISW notes that any Russian claims of advances beyond that are likely overstated. On the Black Sea, a Russian Project 22160 patrol ship, the Pavel Derzhavin, was damaged near Sevastopol in occupied Crimea on October 11th. Another Black Sea Fleet ship, a small Buyan M-class missile carrier, was also damaged in a similar attack the following day. And the Kilo-class submarine Alrosa apparently made an escape. On October 13th, the Pavel Derzhavin was attacked and damaged again, along with the tugboat Professor Nikolai Muru. Ukraine's Navy, in conjunction with intelligence services, used unmanned surface vessels, USVs or sea drones, known as Sea Babies. Aw, cute, that carried experimental weapons. According to an unnamed Ukrainian intelligence source speaking to Ukrainska Pravda on October 13th, quote, after the first explosion, Russian minesweepers and divers were unable to detect our know-how. Yesterday, he meant October 12th, the Alrosa submarine was lucky and managed to escape our invention so far. The Buyan cruise missile carrier was unable to repeat Alrosa's heroic deed and was hit by experimental Sea Baby drone weapons at the Sevastopol raid today. The SBU warns Muscovites not to sail in Ukrainian waters if they want to preserve at least some remnants of their fleet. End quote. Satellite imagery shows engineering structures have been erected in the sea next to the Kerch Bridge in between Tuzla Island and the Kerch Peninsula. The satellite imagery is too grainy for a definitive conclusion, but it likely is a crane barge for defensive structures. Khrushchev, Piglet, an advisor for the illegitimate oleaginous occupation governor of Crimea, announced on October 14th that all 4 lanes of the road bridge have been repaired and are now open for traffic. The world's waiting on you, Germany, to deliver those Taurus missiles to take this newly reopened bridge out. A huge explosion in Sevastopol was heard on October 13th, according to Telegram channel Crimea Realities.
Aw, sad.
Editorial note here. We're going to call Crimea qirim, spelled Qirim, using the Turkic alphabet, the native name for the peninsula. Many Crimean Tatars, the native people of Qırım, prefer to be known in English as qirimli, which accomplishes 2 goals. First, it's not confused with other English or French words like a mayonnaise-based dip commonly used in seafood, tartar, which refers to the calcified buildup of biofilm in the mouth, and tartar, which describes the word for a prepared raw meat or seafood dish. Second, and more importantly, adopting the native word removes the language Russians use to further their colonial exploits. The language spoken by qirimli is qirim Tatar. And finally, qirim Tatarlar is the endonym for the nation of Qırım. An endonym is a self-designated name for a geographical place, group of people, or language and dialect. Qirim Tatarlar is difficult to pronounce for native English speakers, so we'll be using the Autonomous Republic of Qırım for now. The Ukrainian constitution grants autonomous republic status to Qirim Tatarlar. The Q sound is very tricky to pronounce. Although it sounds like the hard C in cat, it's made by closing off the air pipe then expelling the air all at once. You can give it a try. Many other languages have a similar sound. And sidebar for a different day, the names of the cities and settlements in Qırım are all Russian assigned. Catherine II renamed important places following the OG Russian annexation of the peninsula in 1783. Aghar became Sevastopol, Akhmedjit Simferopol, Kislev Evpatoria, and Kefe Feodosia. Muscovites renamed the cities to sound more Greek or Roman to outsiders in an effort to glorify their land empire. Russia then, and today, considers itself to be the inheritors of the Roman and Mongol empires and acts as such. Special shout out to our new friend of the brief who's from Qırım. You know who you are, and thank you so much. In the temporarily occupied territories, the highway bridge connecting Horlivka, Yasinovata, and the city of Donetsk in Donetsk Oblast was destroyed, disrupting Russian logistics operations between Horlivka and Donetsk, and hindering their major offensive operation around Avdiivka just to the northwest. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces reported that a unit of the force's resistance movement blew up a Russian train carrying ammunition and fuel for the Russian military from Qırım, also known as Crimea, in occupied Melitopol in the morning of October 13th. The National Resistance Center reported that 150 meters of railway and a locomotive were damaged in the explosion.
If you're enjoying the episode, please rate us and leave a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us via email at social@borlingon.media. That's BORLINGON.media.
On the home front, a recent poll by the Razumkov Center showed that the majority of Ukrainians oppose holding nationwide elections while the war is still ongoing, with only 15% of respondents indicating a positive attitude towards elections next year. 64% rejected the idea outright, citing the lack of available funding and inability for those in occupied areas to vote. Russian forces shelled a high school in Nikopol in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast on the afternoon of the 11th, killing 4 and injuring 2. A Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group attempted to cross the border into Sumy Oblast, reportedly intending to reach one of the critical civil infrastructure facilities in the area, according to the commander of the Joint Forces of the AFU, Lieutenant General Serhiy Naev. Naev added that the group was met with Ukrainian artillery and mortar attacks, suffered losses, and retreated back across the border. 6 police officers of a company of the Berkut riot police have been indicted for direct involvement in the mass shootings of Euromaidan activists on February 20th, 2014. An investigation carried out by the Ukraine State Bureau of Investigations and the Office of the Prosecutor General established that the indicted officers used their service weapons, smoothbore and automatic firearms loaded with live ammunition, to shoot protesters on Institutska Street in Kyiv, which resulted in the deaths of 48 protesters and injured another 90. In news worldwide, the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, suspended the Russian Olympic Committee effective immediately, stating on October 12th, quote, "The unilateral decision taken by the Russian Olympic Committee on the 5th of October 2023 to include, as its members, the regional sports organizations which are under the authority of the National Olympic Committee of Ukraine, namely Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia, constitutes a breach of the Olympic Charter because it violates the territorial integrity of the NOC of Ukraine as recognized by the IOC in accordance with the Olympic Charter." End quote. So that's nice. I'm surprised it wasn't the systemic doping this time. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe adopted a resolution on October 13th declaring Russia a dictatorship, calling on those in the international community to consider current Russian president/dictator Vladimir Putin's presidency illegitimate once his term ends in 2024, and urging member states to stop all contact with Putin, quote, "except for humanitarian contact and in the pursuit of peace," end quote. It took them 24 years to come to this conclusion. They're only considering his presidency a dictatorship once his current term ends? You do you, Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. During a visit to NATO headquarters in Brussels, United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin assured the alliance that the United States will be able to provide all necessary military assistance to Israel and Ukraine at the same time, saying, quote, "We can and will stand by Israel, even as we stand by Ukraine. The United States can walk and chew gum at the same time," end quote. In a recent interview with Ukrainska Pravda, Kirill Buldanov, head of the main directorate of intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, dished some dirt on Russia's involvement in the terrorist attack committed by Hamas in Israel. When asked about Russia's possible role in the attack, Buldanov mentioned the previously exposed plot to make it appear as though Ukraine had sold Western weapons to Hamas, but he also mentioned a few more direct actions. First, a few weeks ago, a Russian satellite over Lebanon began to transmit in Arabic, quote, "in an absolutely propagandistic style with clear Russian narratives," end quote. Second, a Russian spy satellite capable of conducting electronic reconnaissance and intercepting satellite signals was moved to a geostationary orbit over Israel. You may remember that there was an official visit of the Russian military delegation to Iran from September 22nd to 24th, and we know that there were several requests from Iran, including concerning the expansion of intelligence capabilities. When asked how events in Israel would affect the war in Ukraine, Budanov replied that it could present some problems if the situation drags on beyond a few weeks. Budanov was also asked if we were approaching a world war, to which he responded, quote, "This is my subjective assessment. In terms of geography, we see several conflicts that at first glance seem regional, except for Ukraine, but they all are interconnected by the same countries, which are involved in these processes. So yes, I think we are fast approaching a global war," end quote. A bit of analysis here. British Kremlinologist Mark Galeotti hypothesized on his In Moscow Shadows podcast that the terrorist attacks of Hamas and Hezbollah against Israel weren't instigated by Russia, but that Russia was merely taking advantage of the situation. He also posits that Iran and Russia are, quote, frenemies, as they help each other where they can, but compete in the Middle East. We slightly disagree. There is solid evidence of advanced planning and coordination. While Iran and Russia may have been frenemies before the full-scale invasion in February 2022, they've developed much closer ties now. The Russians have given up much of their leverage over the Iranian regime by purchasing so much drone technology, selling oil at a discount on the global market, and by forcing global food prices higher through its relentless attacks on grain storage facilities in Ukraine. In late-breaking news, Polish Sejm, or parliamentary elections held on Sunday, likely resulted in a major defeat for the long-ruling anti-democratic Law and Justice Party, known by its Polish acronym PiS for Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, if exit polls are accurate. Current opposition leader and former European Council President Donald Tusk and his Civic Coalition Party will likely be able to form a coalition government, ousting the party of President Andrzej Duda and Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki from power. The PIS, along with Hungary's Fidesz party, was accused by the EU and Polish opposition figures of dismantling Poland's democratic institutions during its time in power. PIS has brought the Polish judiciary, public media, and cultural bodies under greater government control and has taken a hard line against abortion access and LGBTQ rights. The election turnout of 73% is the highest in Polish history going back to 1989. A coalition government led by Tusk, who still has to contend with Duda's veto power on new legislation, will likely attempt to restore ties with the EU, continue aid to Ukraine, especially regarding the grain deal, and shift the balance of power in the EU further to the east. As head of government, Tusk will contend with Duda as the head of state. Although not ceremonial, the presidency of Poland is a weaker office than the prime ministership. Now let's talk military tech. At the NATO meeting of defense ministers held on October 11th and 12th, Lithuanian Minister of National Defense, Arvydas Anušauskas, announced a new military aid package for Ukraine. Lithuania is transferring NASAMS air defense systems and 155mm artillery rounds to Ukraine very soon. The artillery rounds were purchased in collaboration with other EU member states. Anušauskas also stated that mine clearance equipment and power generators are top priorities, with Lithuania's government intending to, quote, commit a significant portion of our financial resources for this purpose, end quote. Dutch F-16s will be headed to the new training center in Romania within the next few weeks, according to outgoing Minister of Defense Kaja Alongren. This will enable the center to begin training pilots as soon as they've completed their training in technical English. That's the brief for now. Remember to check your sources and don't fall for propaganda. Join us on YouTube and TikTok for more Ukraine content and live news reports. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our work on Substack. We'll be back with a special episode regarding the situations in the U.S. House of Representatives, Israel and the Middle East, Armenia and Azerbaijan, China, and how it all relates to Ukraine. Until then, stay safe everyone. Buvajte!